Why'd you read so much?
Look at me and tell me what you see.
Is this a trick?
What you see is a dwarf. Well, my brother has a sword, and I have my mind. And a mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone. That's why I read so much Jon Snow.
Just like Tyrion said, dude's running a full intelligence build because his strength tree got permanently locked. But unlike him, most people actually get to choose what they level up. So for all you INT mains out there who picked brain over brawn, let's break down what this skill actually looks like. These people don't know how to say, I don't know. Massive egos, zero self-doubt. They're so convinced they're right that they don't even bother proving it to anyone. Sherlock and Light straight up tryhards. Peak I'm built different energy. Yeah, people call them nerds or pretentious pricks. But they know damn well that actual stupidity is way more suffocating. They're blunt as hell in conversations. No fake small talk, no sugarcoating. They can clock your intelligence level from the first sentence. They only respect other high-level players. They got zero interest in queuing up with people who are clearly below their rank. And they notice shit that flies right over everyone else's head. In the last video, we established that persistence is the one universal skill that works for every class. But if you actually decided to main intelligence as your main stat, then congrats. You're about to eat good in the near future. Here's why. Right now, it's extremely profitable to level up the things most people are completely sleeping on. You're basically playing like those investors who wait for the market to crash so they can buy everything at a discount. Leveling intelligence while the general population is getting dumber sounds like a really good idea. While most people are busy stroking their ego by looking down on everyone beneath them, you'll be looking up at the people above you and figuring out how to surpass them. This is going to create a massive gap between you and your competition. The kind of people whose entire mindset is, why the fuck should I even know this? Not too long ago, roughly 2 million years ago, humans realized that intelligence beats raw strength. That's why most leaders end up choosing the intelligence class. If you start moving in that direction right now, you could realistically reach the top of the food chain in about 5 years. So for those of you who actually decided to go down this path, here's what I believe you should focus on leveling first. Unlike persistence, this skill is actually pretty rare. So anyone claiming that anyone can just pick it up and start using it easily is straight up lying. The main weapon of all mind gamers is critical thinking. So how does it actually work? At its core, it's a system of judgment you apply to analyze situations and information. Using this skill, you can properly evaluate events and then form objective conclusions. And the number of ways you can use it, pretty much endless. A really good example of critical thinking in action is the anime Death Note. Literally, the first mind game between L and Light shows exactly how this skill works in practice. L, working with very limited information, was still able to draw the right conclusions. In one move, he figured out that Kira could kill from a distance, simply by playing on Light's ego. He also realized that Kira needs the victim's real name to do it. And most importantly, by running a broadcast in a specific region, he was able to narrow it down and confirm that Yagami was located in the Kanto region. But that's anime, and L is a literal genius. So what about the real world? Here's how this skill works in its most basic, simplified form. You just build a chain of logical conclusions that eventually leads you to an objective answer. Recently, there was a pretty big troll on X. One user posted an actual Claude Monet painting, but wrote that it was generated with AI. Then, he asked people to explain in detail what made this image inferior to a real Monet. And people went in hard. Hundreds of comments started roasting it. The AI picked the wrong colors, it looks too flat, no textures, soulless, generic, the composition is off, and so on. Only a small number of people actually paused and thought, wait, something feels wrong here. Later, the guy dropped another post revealing that it was a real Monet painting the whole time. So if you look at the comments under that post, you can roughly estimate that around 90% of people were playing without the critical thinking skill, while maybe only 10% actually had it leveled up. These numbers aren't exact, obviously, but the point is, this skill is universal. It applies to literally any field. For this skill to actually work well, you need a solid knowledge base in your head. Something that lets you connect events and build long chains of reasoning that lead to a real answer. And that knowledge base is just basic erudition, general knowledge. The more history, stories, people, and how the world actually works you have stored, the stronger your critical thinking becomes. Thanks to the sub-skill called reflection, you can give answers based on real precedents that already happened in our world. And in most cases, it'll be correct. As Cicero once said, history is the teacher of life. Let's look at a small example. A while ago, a cheater appeared on our server. This guy could straight up break the game's physics. He walked on water, turned water into wine, all that stuff. Everyone knows that crafting wine normally requires way more resources than just water. So the players from his own lobby, tired of catching heat from the other lobbies, eventually kicked him from the server. But then the devs brought him back. Once everyone realized he was in creative mode, they just accepted it. There were other similar players too. One of them even split the sea in half. Because the devs kept letting this specific lobby play with cheats, the other factions started hating on them hard and called them the Chosen Ones. Then later, another player with creative mode showed up from a completely different lobby. And the crazy part? They all had the exact same spawn point. That conflict has been going on for about 2,000 years now. In that time, roughly 20 generations of people, leaders, kings, and warriors have come and gone, but neither side has ever given up that spawn point. And every time you read comments praising the bravery of some hero, you just have to look at history to understand one simple truth. Humans are creatures whose main motivation is survival. And it's not just humans, it's all living things. Even a small fish can develop something as ridiculous as wings if that's what it takes to stay alive in this world. The same goes for nations. Whenever a group of people is targeted for removal from the game, they will fight with everything they have to stay on the server. Throughout all of history, there has never been a single leader, whether an altruist or a psychopath, who was willing to sacrifice their entire nation for the sake of saving the world. Of course, there have been leaders who made enormous personal sacrifices, but even in those cases, the goal was almost always to protect and ensure the survival of their own community and their beliefs, not to dissolve or destroy it. At the end of the day, people just want to live. That's why when you see people praising characters who think they can stop evil by simply removing all the villains, or by removing their own clan, real history shows that these ideas almost never work the way they do on paper, no matter how clean and logical they sound in theory. And if you strip away all the flashy superpowers and fantasy elements from any story or anime, what's left is just regular human nature. Human minds can't invent something that another human mind can't eventually understand. Sometimes it just takes a little longer. The whole world is connected. Everything you see in shows and anime has already happened in real history. The only difference is that fiction gives you a more exaggerated, dramatized version of power and conflict. Other worlds and stories are just reflections of our own world with a few tweaks. Whatever doesn't work in reality won't magically work in fiction either. And yeah, I also wanted to say that there's no such thing as useless information. People who say, reading books is useful, but watching anime is a waste of time, don't understand that information is information. The only real difference is how it's delivered. If someone can't even understand the storytelling in anime, and let's be honest, most anime explains things pretty directly, even Berserk and Death Note basically spoon-feed the plot to the viewer, then reading a book isn't going to magically make them smarter. Take something like Flowers for Algernon. You could easily adapt it into a 12-episode anime and it would be an absolute banger. The little mouse could be drawn super likable, and the emotional impact would still hit hard. The only real difference is that when you read the book, your brain has to do more work. You have to visualize the characters, their voices, the settings, and remember all the details yourself. Because unlike anime, books don't have a previously on recap button. Critical thinking is a high-level skill that only unlocks after you've leveled up several lower ones first. Things like erudition, actually knowing a lot of stuff. Analysis, being able to tell obvious things apart. Criticism, not immediately believing everything you hear and taking a moment to check if the information actually makes sense. It's an insanely strong skill. But the gameplay isn't exactly one button. So stay sharp,